We love it, guys. Have fun this weekend, and it's great to see you. But you guys don't have to see my ugly mug for a while. We'll see you guys next week. But appreciate you guys.
You got a favorite Halloween candy?
There's not a candy I don't like. You don't get this figure from being picky. Give it all to me. I take all the sugar I can.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Coach.
it,
Happy
guys.
Halloween.
Welcome in, everybody. Little Thursday morning edition. Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Hope, like Kalani Sitake, the BYU head coach, you're getting ready for a fun Halloween weekend. I am dressed up today as a sports podcaster. Yes, you can see I put a lot of effort into my Halloween costume, but hope everybody has a great Halloween weekend, and I hope everybody is ready for a fun Thursday episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. So we're going to open. If you don't think Torres is opening with the Louisiana governor, you have not been paying attention. We're talking to the Louisiana governor, what he said, what he meant, and really what it means for the LSU head coaching search. From there, we will talk a little bit about the Penn State job, where there might be, believe it or not, a favorite emerging, and it's not the name you think. It ain't Matt Rule. It's somebody else, somebody off the radar. We'll discuss that. And then from there, if we have time, I'm a little short on time today, we will do some college hoops, because there's a surprise team emerging, in my opinion, as the potential team to get the #1 recruiting class in all of college basketball. You got to stick around and see what I have to say. By the way, as always, my Week 10 college football picks: Texas Vandy, Auburn, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi State, USC, Nebraska. They are available at AaronTorresOnline.com. So no previews today because we got way too much to get into. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. As we close in on 64,000 subscribers, we are so grateful for everything that all of you do for this channel. The growth has been insane. I'll tell you really quick, October is set to be our most viewed month in the history of the Aaron Torres Pod, so it shows you just how much we're growing. By the way, I said we're closing in on 64,000. We have well surpassed 64. We're on the road to 65K and then 70K, so we really do appreciate your support. Also, if you do listen on Apple or Spotify, make sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, leave a review as well. Also, before we get started, you know what I got to do? I got to thank our friends. I got to thank the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. I got to thank SeatGeek. Okay, so SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app, 28 million downloads across the country, across the globe. And this puppy has tickets for everything: shows, concerts, your favorite game, your favorite team, whatever. And well, guess what? It's October going into November. It's one of the best times on the sports calendar, and you need tickets. Maybe you're a Kentucky fan, your football team stinks, but you want to watch basketball. Maybe you're, a BYU fan, and your team's good at everything. Maybe you're a UConn fan getting set for a busy, busy fall. Whatever team you support, make sure you use SeatGeek, okay? Again, America's #1 ticketing app. Every ticket on the app is rated 1 through 10, a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means stay away. What I really love about SeatGeek, though, you already know. They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. I see Paul in the chat. Paul used SeatGeek, promo code Torres, to get $20 off tickets to the Florida-Texas A&M game a few weeks ago. So take advantage like Paul did. If you missed that, if you use the SeatGeek app, download the SeatGeek app, use promo code Torres, that's TORRES. It gets you $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. We appreciate the support of SeatGeek, and we appreciate the support of you as well. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, $20 off any ticket on the app. Shows, concerts. As we said, we have a listener that's bought Backstreet Boys tickets. Thank you for your support. Well, that's it. It is a busy Thursday heading into Halloween weekend, final Thursday of October. No more time to waste. So, folks, let's do it. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, it is the LSU coaching search. And I'll say this, and I think I said it a few weeks ago about Penn State, but it is crazy. You know, everything at LSU happens so fast that I think, you know, we're just so conditioned, and I include myself in the media. I assume you guys as consumers, like, we just digest the piece of information and then we just move on to the next thing, right? And so I bring it up with LSU because It goes from, hey, they're top 20 in the country and very much in the playoff race. If they beat Texas A&M, they get destroyed by Texas A&M. It goes from bad to worse to Brian Kelly fired. And then we're already talking about Lane Kiffin, Clark Lee, James Franklin as the next head coach. But what I don't think we took time to appreciate was how quickly things happened. And I think transparently how just crazy it is in Louisiana around this LSU coaching search. You know, when I knew that Brian Kelly was in trouble, it was obviously during the Texas A&M game. And I have been somebody, if you listen to this show, I've been critical of Brian Kelly. I thought after the Vandy game, I said, hey, there is no excuse for your team to be playing as poorly as it is, to look like they did against Vandy, but they lose to A&M. And the moment that I knew, oh, Brian Kelly's in real trouble here, we talked about it on Sunday night, but do you remember the Louisiana governor, Josh Landry, on Saturday night, after the game, tweeting about the situation at LSU? I don't know if you remember the story, Matt, if we have the tweet. LSU announces that they are raising tickets last week. They get boat raced by Texas A&M. And the governor, Jeff Landry, I think I said Josh Landry, Jeff Landry, governor, I apologize. Because, Governor, we want you to come on this show because you clearly have takes on sports. So, Governor Landry, I apologize. But this was on Saturday night after the game. He said, I think LSU Sports and the LSU Board of Supervisors needs to rethink their actions to raise ticket prices for next year after tonight's showing. So you knew the governor wasn't happy. Then we found out on Sunday the governor is involved with the firing process. And goodness gracious, did we get an update on the LSU coaching search on Wednesday? Listen, by now you've all seen the video. By now you've all heard the audio. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what the governor, Jeff Landry, said at one of his media availabilities on Wednesday. Now, as it turns out, and I just found this out after the fact, the media availability was all about SNAP benefits, okay? And this is where, by the way, we're going to delve a little bit into politics, and we're not a political show, and we're not trying to take sides on issues. We got other shows for that. And by the way, there's plenty of other sports commentators that want to share their political opinions. I'm not one of them. But at the same time, Governor Landry was addressing SNAP benefits on Wednesday. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he is asked about the LSU football coaching job. Trey Wallace, my buddy, shared that tweet. Bam, LSU football and athletics come up. Well, Governor Landry was asked about the LSU coaching search. And more importantly, remember, Scott Woodward is the man that hired Brian Kelly at LSU. It's also worth noting, and you'll hear this in the audio, Scott Woodward is also the guy that hired Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. He was asked about the coaching search. Is Scott Woodward making the hire? How is the next process going to play out? Governor Landry did not hold back on Wednesday. Let's take a listen.
To foot the bill. So, yeah, I absolutely. Who's that? No. I can tell you right now, Scott Woodward is not selecting the next coach. Hell, I'll let Donald Trump select it before I let him do it. I don't know, but the Board of Supervisors is going to come up with a committee, and they're going to go find us a coach. Hold on. One real quick thing on that. Because here's what y'all reporters need to do. Y'all need to start looking at who represents all these people. Like these agents. You know what's interesting? If I'm not mistaken, Woodward's agent, Kelly's agent, the Texas A&M, they're all the same agent. Like you realize if I would be, I don't know how many sports writers we got here today? Just you. We should have a bunch. Okay? Like this is ridiculous. Lawyers would be disbarred for the way these agents act and the way they're able to represent. In fact, there's no doubt, they may even represent some of the players now. Like it's really time for the NCAA to put on some guardrails in college sports. Because, and it's fine, we don't need the guardrails. If big billionaires want to spend all that kind of money, no problem. But if I got to go find $53 million from Kemp, it's not going to be a pleasant conversation. I'm just telling you.
As I told you, Governor Landry's got takes, baby. And I'll tell you this, Governor Landry, if this makes it back to you, maybe, Matt, we clip this off and tag it for Governor Landry. Governor Landry, you got sports takes. If you want to come on the Aaron Torres pod and talk the state of LSU football, what needs to get fixed, maybe even the state of college football in general, you, my man, have an open invite. So let's go ahead and dive in to the situation at LSU. And I think the big thing that everybody wants to know is all this chaos actually going to impact the coaching job? First of all, a couple thoughts on the actual audio from Governor Landry. One, I say this in the least disrespectful way possible, okay? Because everybody has comments about how Torres talks, right? Like, every time I say click the subscribe button, everybody tells me I don't know how to say the word button. I don't know how to say it better. Anyway, I bring it up because serious question. Has anyone sounded more like a Louisiana governor than the actual Louisiana governor? That's no disrespect. It's just a fact, okay? Like, I'm sorry. But if you were going central casting, we need an accent, we need the whatever. I don't want to be judgmental. I'm not being judgmental. He sounds like the Louisiana governor, exactly how I want my Louisiana governor to sound. Just like I want my Massachusetts governor to sound like JFK. Don't do for the country, whatever it is. You get the point. I'm off the rails today. It's 2 days before Halloween. I'm like Kalani Sitake. I've had too much sugar. Anyway, one, love this Landry character. Love that he sounds exactly like I want a Louisiana governor to sound. Two, I think he made some interesting points about the state of college sports. Now, I would say a couple things he said aren't totally accurate. Brian Kelly and Jimbo Fisher do not have the same agent. Brian Kelly is represented by Trace Armstrong, Jimbo Fisher by Jimmy Sexton. Also worth noting, Scott Woodward actually didn't give Jimbo Fisher the big extension that led to the buyout. It was Ross Bjork. Scott Woodward did hire Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. So just a couple things out of that audio, but I do think his broader point about the state of college sports is worth addressing. But then I think the bigger picture issue is this, is that what we learned in that audio, Scott Woodward, the AD, is not making the coaching hire. I think it is very fair to assume that there will not be an AD in place to make a coaching hire, and it sounds like there's going to be an outside committee making the decision. And so I think three, the combination of no AD plus a little bit of chaos in the state, to say the least, with the governor trying to use the football program to score political points, is it going to scare away serious contenders for the job? So let's go ahead and talk about all of it. And by the way, for full coverage of all things LSU, because it's coming over these next few days, make sure to follow Torres on LSU for all your late-breaking LSU news. Torres on LSU, one of our team-specific accounts. We have an intern helping us. We appreciate his support on that page. All right, so let's dive in. No AD. Let's talk about that aspect of this whole situation at LSU. It's certainly not a good thing. And I think sometimes, the obvious point is the important one. I think sometimes, I like to honestly, frankly, have perspective that others don't have. But I think the perspective here is the obvious one. Does anyone really like taking a job where you don't know who your boss is going to be when you take it? Listen, we've all been in these situations, right? Any walk of life, right? When you're thinking about leaving one job for another, there's a couple variables. One, what's the compensation package, whether it's pay, whether it's benefits, whether it's whatever, you're thinking about that. Is it better than where you're at? That's usually one reason to take a job. Two, what is it, a better job, period? Are you getting a promotion? Are you getting a raise? Well, LSU, I believe, is one of the best jobs in college football, which is a positive we'll get to in a second. But then three, I think whenever you're leaving a job, especially a good job where you're having success, it comes down to who are you going to be working for at the next place? Do you like that guy or girl? Do you believe in that guy or girl? Do you believe that person is going to help elevate you even further? And generally, if you can't answer that question with a yes, that's usually a pretty big red flag. My buddy Colin Cowherd says this all the time. He says, don't chase money, chase great management. In other words, it's not just about how good you are. It's about how good are the people that you're working for. It's something I take seriously in my career. If I'm not working with or for people that I like and I trust, I just don't take a job. And so I think that's certainly a factor. We don't know who the AD is. And then beyond that, when we're not going to know who the AD is before this hire gets made. And then beyond that, clearly there's chaos behind the scenes. The governor's involved. Like I said, he's trying to score political points. What does it all mean? All of that. And so I think it's raised a very fair question of, is this going to impact the hiring process at LSU? I think it's worth a conversation. And I think definitely if you are a guy that has real, genuine, either great options or you already have a great A+++ job, then yeah, it probably will. I think the chaos, probably if I was Marcus Freeman sitting at Notre Dame saying, I got a really good job, I might make the playoff again for a second straight year, might want to pump the brakes on that one. Lane Kiffin, I got a great job at Ole Miss. Florida wants me. The NFL probably wants me at this point. Is that a situation I want to walk into? But what I would also say is this. I will defend LSU by saying that I think the job is so good that I think for the vast, vast, vast majority of candidates, it probably doesn't mean very much. And I'll take it a step further. I think even for the elite candidates, the job is so good, you have to at least think about it. As far as the LSU job is concerned, we talked about this on Sunday when Brian Kelly was fired. I think there are, to me, 4 jobs that are a cut above everyone else in college football. Okay. 4 jobs where basically you are, one, you're in a power conference. You are in a place where you have everything needed to win at the highest level, and where, for the most part, you don't have a ton of competition for the best players in your area. Now, look, I know high school recruiting isn't as important as it once was. I still think you want to, it's just easier to find really good players. I mean, Ed Orgeron did an interview on the other day, I think it was Wednesday, where he was asked about being like an assistant at Florida. He said, I could go find an All-American within a 15-minute drive anywhere in that state. So high school recruiting does matter. I think the 4 jobs that to me are definitively better than every other job are Ohio State, Georgia, Texas. I know that A&M is there and they're recruiting really well, but there's so many players in Texas, I don't know that it matters. And then LSU. And I think you can actually argue that LSU might be the best one because unlike Georgia, unlike Texas, there is no other power conference school in your state. And players grow up, you don't need me to tell you, but every player in Louisiana grows up wanting to go to LSU. I don't know that that happens in every other state. I don't know that every kid in, Georgia not even necessarily wants to go to Georgia. Some want to go to Auburn. Some want to go to Bama. Some want to go to Florida State, whatever. LSU, all those kids pretty much want to go to LSU. Like, I think it's kind of interesting. Number 1 high school player in America, a defensive lineman by the name of Lamar Brown, is from Louisiana and committed to LSU. And why I find that funny is not funny. That's not the right word, but why I find it interesting. He was asked about decommitting and potentially looking at other schools. And he said, look, you can call me, but right now I'm fully committed to LSU and I am going to wait to see who the next head coach is before I make any big decisions. And I'm paraphrasing. Steve Wiltfong has all the details. I've heard Steve Wiltfong talk about it. I'm not trying to take credit as my own reporting, but the point is, I don't think he's going to decommit. And I think it's because, kids in that state grow up wanting to be an LSU Tiger. I think the other thing, though, and I'll mention this, is the LSU job is so good, I don't think it's going to scare most people away because, again, how many people really have better jobs where it's not worth taking the risk? Remember, for whatever we think about how the Brian Kelly era worked out, the bottom line is the winningest coach in the history of Notre Dame football left Notre Dame voluntarily to take this job. So that shows you how good the job is. And I was also thinking about this, is that I just don't know how much the AD not being in place matters for this reason. I don't know how much power any AD has in this new era of college football as we get to a world where we have general managers and front offices and whatever. And if you look at the landscape of the rest of college football, I think you'd actually be surprised with all these jobs open over how many of these ADs are actually going to make the hire, right? So if you want to argue, okay, well, LSU, the job is open, but who are you going to work for? Okay, that's fine. Well, guess what? I live in Los Angeles. I am here to tell you the UCLA job is open. The AD, Martin Jarmond, is not making the hire. He might technically have the figurehead AD job for a couple more years. He ain't making the hire, and whoever hires the football coach, that football coach will sort of be reporting to Martin Jarmond, but not really. Virginia Tech, it is publicly known, the AD is not making the hire. At Arkansas, Hunter Yurchek's saying all the right things about I believe that I have the power to make the hire. I don't think ultimately he really has that power. Now, maybe he does, but it's going to come with booster, sway and sway from other people. He doesn't have final say to make that stamp. Even Florida with Scott Strickland, I don't know how much sway that he really has in the hire. So I just think as you start to look at these jobs, and let's just pull out a random candidate, right? Let's just, whether it's James Franklin, whether it's Alex Golish, whether it's John Summerall, whatever. I mean, everywhere you're going to go to, and by the way, maybe it is Lane Kiffin, maybe it is Marcus Freeman. Wherever you're going to go, there's going to be problems. There's going to be issues. And LSU's problems and issues, frankly, are, what do they say? Like caviar problems. In other words, problems are a little bit easier when you're eating caviar. In other words, people that are worth $1 billion have problems just like everybody else, but their problems are a little bit different and maybe a little bit easier to solve than some other ones. Terrible analogy. Like I said, too much candy on this Halloween weekend. But I think you get the point. And I think the point that I'm trying to make is, yeah, it's a little bit dysfunctional. But guess what? It was dysfunctional 5, 10, 15 years ago when Les Miles was winning national championships, when Ed Orgeron was winning national championships. And even if it is dysfunctional, it's frankly probably not that much more dysfunctional than pretty much any other job in America. And so I'm just curious to see what happens. And I do think coaches, yes. Will it be a variable? Absolutely. Is it something to consider? Absolutely. Is it something for someone like Lane Kiffin, who maybe already has a great job and doesn't need to think about doesn't need to worry about a whatever? Yeah, maybe it makes him reconsider. But again, the guys that have good jobs, but maybe not great jobs, they probably should reconsider. They probably should think about it, and it probably isn't going to matter all that much. Listen, none of us know how the coaching hires are going to shake out. Nobody does. Anyone that says they don't know what they're talking about. Even Jimmy Sexton at this point, I don't think knows, hey, this guy's going to end up here, whatever. But what I will say is, I don't think this is going to keep LSU from getting a premium candidate. And by the way, maybe there's just not the premium candidate that everybody wants. Maybe it won't be Lane Kiffin. Maybe it won't be Marcus Freeman. But then guess what? Is it, again, John Summerall? Is it somebody else? Is it what? It doesn't really matter who it is. They're going to get somebody good. I don't think this matters that much. It was great audio for mid-October. Again, we appreciate Governor Landry. And again, Governor Landry, you have an open invite to this show. I just don't know how much it matters. So that's LSU. That's Governor Landry talking about the state of LSU football. Yeah, it's getting crazy down there on the bayou. But again, I don't think it's keeping them from getting a good football coach. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, speaking of good football coaches, Penn State needs one of those, and we got an interesting name that seems to be emerging as the favorite there. We'll take a quick break, talk Penn State, be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody, I am back. Good to be back. So let's go ahead and keep the conversation going. Before we get to it, Luke does have one quick question. Luke always bringing the support of the show. Great questions from Luke as always. I do agree that the agent rules seem to be a massive conflict of interest. Hard to believe it's legal, but it must be. Seems like we need antitrust rule for sports agents. I mean, I think it's interesting, right? I'll just say this really quick. I don't understand how all antitrust suits, work and all that, but I know what a monopoly looks like, and it sure does feel like Jimmy Sexton has a monopoly on the industry. I'll tell you a quick funny side story. It's not really funny, but it's just interesting. I saw Peter Burns from SEC Network. Back in the day, we actually had him on the show like 5 years ago, but very nice guy. Don't love most of his football takes. He put out this tweet about we need to reset the market, 4-year contracts, signing bonuses, this, that. I actually think the exact opposite is going to happen. I think, we've been everybody, and I include myself in this part. I've been one of many that said, I think this year officially ends the era of huge guaranteed contracts with these crazy buyouts. I think we're going to get right back into that cycle this year, because just think about it. If you're Lane Kiffin, whether you stay at Ole Miss, whether you stay at whatever, you have all the leverage, right? You have the leverage over Ole Miss, but you also have leverage over somebody that wants to take you from Ole Miss. So what are you going to ask for? A ton of guaranteed money, fully guaranteed. And if you get fired, you want a fat check on your way out. And by the way, you also want the flexibility to get out when you want. If Missouri is afraid they're going to lose Eli Drinkwitz, guess what? They're going to have to guarantee him good terms on his terms. By the way, if John Summerall is a candidate at LSU, maybe Auburn, maybe Kentucky, Arkansas, guess what? He's going to be able to dictate terms. James Franklin might be a candidate at Virginia Tech and Arkansas, among others. Guess what? He's going to be able to dictate terms. And if he has offers on the table from Arkansas and Virginia Tech, or if the perception even is that he has offers from Arkansas and Virginia Tech, then guess what? He is going to largely be able to dictate those terms and get favorable contract terms. So it's a great point. I think it's very interesting. I just don't know what you can do. And I was one that felt like, okay, it's finally going to correct itself here in 2025. I don't think it is, because as somebody else brought up in the chat, I think it was Paul, too many open jobs, not enough good candidates. Well, guess what? When there's a supply shortage and a demand in place, whatever the supply, whatever supply is available, they're going to dictate the terms. So bad economics there, but great question by Luke. And what I want to do is switch gears. Before we switch gears, though, we're heading into week 10. Penn State, Ohio State was supposed to be one of the big games. It is not, but it doesn't mean that if you want to watch games somewhere, you can't. That is why I want to tell you about our friends, our hotel and casino partners. I want to tell you about Circa Casino and Circa Sportsbook. Okay, so listen, I've told you all about Circa. If you're in Vegas, by the way, if you're in Vegas next week for the doubleheader in college hoops, Arizona, Florida, BYU, and Villanova, I'll be doing live shows from Circa. Swing by, say hi. I'll also be out there for the Players Era later in the month. But if you're in Vegas, best place to watch games. But I know not everybody can get to Vegas. Well, guess what? Circa has opened a brand new sports book, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. All the best parts of Circa travel to the East Coast. Mint Kentucky Downs, for people who are not familiar, right on that Tennessee-Kentucky border, about 35, 40 minutes from Nashville. And it is transparently just the best place for you to watch games. So if you're in Kentucky, you need a place to watch all these college hoops games coming up, college football on a Saturday, NFL on a Sunday. If you're in Nashville, if you're in Tennessee, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky is officially a Circa Sportsbook. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to love it. Check them out. Tag Circa Sports if you go. Tell them Torres sent you. Tag Aaron Torres as well, Aaron_Torres. We appreciate Circa support. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. As I'll say this, the carousel, I said it to lead the show. The carousel has been so crazy this year that what's insane to me is that these huge jobs are opening up and we just forget about them. Arkansas opens up and it's like, we just don't talk about, like, when's the last time we talked about the UCLA job? And it happened with Penn State. Penn State opens 3 weeks ago. We're stunned that Penn State is willing to pay the buyout on James Franklin. Now, I know what the way it works. They're not going to have to pay nearly the $50 million, but he gets fired. We're shocked by it. We sort of move on, and then boom, Florida fires Billy Napier, and we forget about Penn State. Then LSU fires Brian Kelly, and we forget about Penn State. And so it's been a while since we did a Penn State update. But I'll tell you what, I think a quiet name is maybe emerging as the favorite. So as far as Penn State, where we last left off with Penn State, it was Matt Rule. Penn State opens. Matt Rule is the natural name. Matt Rule played at Penn State. Matt Rule worked for the current AD at Penn State. They have a great relationship. When the new AD came to Nebraska, he asked Pat Kraft, the Penn State AD, about Matt Rule. And guess what the Penn State AD said? He said, do whatever Matt says and you'll have success. So that is the respect that they have for each other. And it'll be interesting. There are differing reports on Matt Rule maybe getting an extension. I saw Will Compton, who's certainly plugged in that fan base, the former Nebraska player now in the media, say that is not the case. But what I'll also say is increasingly, listen, I was always a little dubious about Matt Rule. I mean, he's got kids in middle school and high school. And I understand you met your wife at Penn State and it's a great job and it's this and it's that. But you're going to uproot your family. Your wife has a business in town. Your parents just moved to Nebraska to be closer to you. Could you do it? Yes. Is it the kind of job where it's a no-brainer? I don't think it's a no-brainer. And especially as you're entering year 4 at Nebraska next year, where Dylan Raiola would, in theory, be going into his 3rd year in your system. So I've never really bought that Matt Rule will take the job. He's certainly a candidate as we record here at 11:34 a.m. Eastern time. But what I also think we have to do is acknowledge he might not take the job, and where does the candidate pool fall from here? And I bring it up because a very interesting name has started to emerge as maybe a favorite for the head coaching job at Penn State. Not somebody I would have anticipated, somebody that I actually rolled my eyes at as recently as like 3 days ago. I'm starting to get a little lukewarm on this one. Brian Hartline, the OC at Ohio State. So multiple reports have come out over the last couple of days. Matt, you can just kind of pop up the tweets as they happen. So one, apparently there's some sort of metric that is basically, I don't even know exactly what the deal is, but it says that currently he's actually deemed to be the favorite, according to the computers, to land the job. Oh, by the way, I saw a Penn State Ohio State page quote a Penn State message board saying, according to Joe Schmelter, Ohio State offensive coordinator / receiver coach Brian Hartline is a candidate for the Penn State head coaching job. So this has picked up buzz, and I'll tell you this. I heard about this over the weekend. Okay, so I'll tell you a quick side story. But I was getting off my Fox Sports radio shift, 2 a.m. Eastern time. I have a buddy who's pretty plugged in at Penn State, and we were texting throughout the show, just talking about college football. And I said, "So what are you hearing about Penn State?" And he said, I'm hearing a lot about Brian Hartline. And I'm like, really? You fired James Franklin, a guy with a 75% win percentage, to hire a first-year head coach who, let's not forget this about Brian Hartline, because I think it's important. He was actually put in place 3 seasons ago now, so the 2023 season, to call plays. It did not go well. They had to basically demote him, hire Chip Kelly to be the OC last year, and now he's back at the OC spot. And so my first inclination was, that sounds crazy. That sounds terrible. I don't like it. But the more that I talk to my buddy, I can at least see it. And I could see the scenario why Penn State fans would actually be excited about it. Now, it runs counter to what we've heard. We've heard Pat Kraft, the AD, wants to hire a sitting head coach, a big name. He was going to, take the big swings on Marcus Freeman and on Matt Rule and whatever. But let me explain to you how my buddy who's plugged in at Penn State explained it to me, because I do think it makes it a sort of interesting scenario. First of all, Brian Hartline, known as an elite recruiter, okay? And listen, I know that James Franklin was a very good recruiter, but Brian Hartline is doing it at a different level. Now, maybe part of it is because he's got that block O on his chest. The scarlet and gray hits a little bit different across the country, but we can't deny what he has done as the lead recruiter and wide receiver coach at that school. Even if you just want to talk wide receivers, Marvin Harrison, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on of guys that he's brought in and that he's developed. I think and so by the way, I think the thought is he will at minimum have an elite roster, and it's just whether he can coach or not. I think the thing that I brought up to my buddy, and he didn't necessarily fully agree with me, but I think he sort of did, is I would think that in theory, you could maybe get him a little bit on the cheap and then really invest into an elite coaching staff, right? So if you think Jim Knowles is the long-term answer, you can say, hey, Jim Knowles, stay being the highest paid defensive coordinator, come work for me. You can hire a full-time play caller, because Brian Hartline isn't a guy that should be demanding $10, $12 million a year like a Dan Lanning if he's going to leave, and he's not leaving, but you get the point. Like a Marcus Freeman who's not leaving, but if he left, you get the point. Like a Lane Kiffin, et cetera. To me, I think that if you do want to go in the Brian Hartline direction, the conversation becomes, hey, dude, you got to take a little bit less, because this is by far the best job you're going to get. Now, you can hope that another job opens up that's not as good as this, and you'll get more base salary, but he makes $2 million a year. You give him 6.5, 7, you're tripling his salary, and then you say, hey, maybe you're a $10 million a year coach in a few years, but let's start you at 6, build up the coaching staff, build up NIL. And this is where my buddy brought up a couple interesting points. First of all, offensive mind. And I think at Penn State specifically, that matters. Why is that? Well, we've all watched Penn State's offense the last couple of years. It's pretty tough to watch. They have not been a good offense since Saquon Barkley, Joe Moorhead, and who was it? Trace McSorley were on campus. So it speaks to like the idea of like, oh, you're actually going to have a fun offense with fun players. Yeah, maybe it's something that you should consider. And certainly at Penn State, it hits a little bit different because the offense has been so bad. And finally, I'll say this is, I even mentioned this the other day on the Tuesday show, and who knows how truthful it is, but it is kind of worth at least acknowledging. I've been told behind the scenes that Brian Hartline is promising to bring players with him off that Ohio State roster. Now, how true is that? I don't think even Brian Hartline really knows. I mean, listen, I can tell you this. In coaching hirings, whether it's head coaches or even assistants, I promise you, everybody's pitching I can bring somebody, right? In basketball, this is very famous. A high school coach will be hired to bring an elite recruit. Sometimes you'll take an assistant off of another coaching staff and he'll bring 2 or 3 players with him from the previous place. Well, I've been told behind the scenes, Brian Hartline is promising to bring some of those players at Ohio State that frankly are not seeing the field right now, but good enough to play at Ohio State or anywhere in college football. But here's the other thing. Frankly, players that probably won't get on the field next year either as well. Because the thing about Ohio State, I don't think a lot of people realize, last year was the year they built towards. This year was supposed to be kind of that middle year before they had an elite team again next year. And most of their best players aren't even draft eligible this year. That's what made the Penn State thing such a colossal disaster. Drew Aller last year, Nick Singleton last year, Katron Allen last year, the wide receivers are all brought in. It's like this is a very finite window for Penn State. This was supposed to be the year that you caught Ohio State. Julian Sayin, first-year starter, redshirt freshman. Jeremiah Smith, only a true sophomore, not eligible for the NFL draft. And so I bring it up because, I'm not going to say – listen, I don't know who Brian Hartline in theory is going to promise, but what I can tell you is this. There's some really good quarterbacks on that roster that are not going to get on the field next year. Julian Sayin is a redshirt freshman. He is not draft eligible. Well, you know who Ohio State has backing him up? 1, they got Lincoln Kineholz, who's been around forever. But 2, Tavian St. Clair, 5-star recruit in last year's class, top 5 prospect in the country. I don't know if Brian Hartline has personally promised him, but what I could tell you is this, is that if I was Brian Hartline, I think it's an interesting conversation to have, right? Hey, I might be able to bring Tavian St. Clair with me, and we can hit the ground running right away. Quincy Porter, one of the top wide receivers in the high school class last year, 3 catches so far this season. Well, guess what? It ain't going to get any easier to see the field next year when Jeremiah Smith is a true junior. Could Quincy Porter come with him? And so to me, I don't know if that should be the be-all, end-all sell. I do think it's kind of a pretty strong sell, though, right? Hey, we're going to bring all this 5-star talent that can't get on the field at Ohio State, and we're going to plug them into Penn State right away. The defensive infrastructure is already there. We're going to ramp up this offense, and it's going to be full speed ahead. So, look, no one truly knows where the Penn State coaching search stands. I don't know that we get answers today or tomorrow or the next day. But I think the Brian Hartline stuff is real. And I'll take it a step further. It became much more interesting to me as I learned more about it. We'll see what Brian Hartline ends up doing, but this is fascinating. And I do think if Brian Hartline maybe takes a little bit less money to pump back into NIL and to pump into his coaching staff, and he can bring hypothetically Tavian St. Clair and maybe Quincy Porter, maybe a couple other wide receivers, that all of a sudden makes him a very, very interesting candidate. And to be clear, I want to make one thing clear because I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to get phone calls from people at Ohio State. I am not saying that Brian Hartline has promised any specific player, but I think he feels like there will be some players that would be interested in following me. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, one more topic. We'll switch gears to college hoops really quick. There is a surprise team that could be closing in on the #1 recruiting class in college hoops. Will Wade and the NC State Wolfpack. We'll take a quick break, tell you what you need to know. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. One bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauleyPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauley Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Thank you again to Cauley Puffs. 15% off any purchase at CauleyPuffs.com when you use promo code Torres. By the way, Matt, you don't have to pull it up, but Paul does bring up an interesting point going back to the Penn State story from a minute ago. I'm not as anti-hiring a first-time head coach as I maybe once was. I'd rather have the first-time head coach that's bought into this era of college football than like the Brian Kelly type who's 60 and still trying to do it like it's 2009. So Paul brings up the point, who was Dan Campbell before he got hired on and on? Who was Dan Lanning? Dan Lanning, I think, is a great example of if you get the right guy with the right idea in place, it could work out well. All right, we only got a few minutes left here, so I want to be quick. I do want to switch gears to some college hoops. Okay, so college hoops, by the way, Monday is actually opening day of college basketball. Now, listen, I don't think the sport does a good enough job promoting itself in the lead up to the season. That's another conversation for another day. By the way, I will be doing a show live from Circa on Monday at some point, previewing the doubleheader in Las Vegas. It is Arizona versus the defending champs Florida Gators, as well as BYU, the debut of AJ DeBonsa against Villanova. So college hoops is coming, but there is a very interesting story emerging behind the scenes in the world of college hoops recruiting. That is because that man right there, Will Wade, we were all excited. Well, a lot of people, most people were excited about seeing what he could do at NC State when he got the job. You know, a program that for years we've been waiting for the right coach at. He gets the job. He hits the ground running. And how about this? I think there's a very good chance that Will Wade and North Carolina State are going to end up with the #1 high school recruiting class in all of college basketball this year. And there was a piece of news that we'll get to in a second. Matt, you don't have to pop the tweet yet, but a piece of interesting recruiting news that we'll get to in a second. So first of all, a little bit of context. Will Wade's awesome. We know that. And I think the Will Wade narrative is really kind of cool to follow as he's rebuilt his image over the last couple years, right? And I keep saying this with Will Wade. If he had just gotten the NC State job right after LSU, I think there would have been this notion of, well, how it ended at LSU, all of that. But I think when you go to McNeese State and you win 58 games or whatever it is, people realize, like, darn, you're a good coach. But when you take good coaching with great coaching with great recruiting, you have a powder keg, the likes of which, you know, very few places in college basketball have. And so Will Wade gets to NC State. He has what I believe to be a top 25 roster. I think closer to a top 20 roster this season. And I think what's worth noting is the work that he did in recruiting. Obviously, it's mostly in this era of college sports, portal guys. Darion Williams is the preseason ACC Player of the Year. Trey Holloman, Terrence Arsenault, all of the players that he brought in through the portal. But what's also worth noting, and this is interesting, he signed Matt Abel. Matt Abel was a 5-star prospect in the 2025 class, currently a freshman. How about this? Matt Abel, highest ranked recruit that NC State has signed since Dennis Smith Jr. in 2016. So Will Wade gets the job within a month, signs the highest rated recruit since Dennis Smith Jr. in 2016. Then, oh, by the way, in the 2026 class, has Cole Clower committed, a top 25 or so prospect who is the second highest rated prospect since Dennis Smith Jr. committed in 2016. That's all well and good, but if you think our boy Will Wade is slowing down anytime soon, think again, because I saw this tweet, and now, Matt, you could pop it up, from our buddy who covers NC State, Corey Smith. He covers NC State for Pack Pride. It is the 24/7 outlet that covers NC State. How about this? Over the next 2 weekends, NC State will host not one, but 2 elite guards, 5-star guard Dylan Mingo this weekend, 5-star guard Deron Rippey Jr., both scheduled for official visits as they close in on decisions in the coming weeks. Listen, we don't know how it's all going to play out, but do you doubt Will Wade is? I don't want to put it out there and then NC State fans get mad at me. I think you got to feel pretty good that he's getting one. I think it's certainly possible you don't get either. But I think it's also possible that you get both. And if you get both, we could be talking about the #1 high school basketball recruiting class in America. And for Will Wade, in year 1, first full cycle, that would be a hell of an accomplishment. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the 2 players. First of all, Dylan Mingo's, they're both really good. But Dylan Mingo, 6'5", guard, New York City area. I think he plays maybe Long Island Lutheran. He plays in Long Island, but he's one of my favorite players in the 2026 high school class. Okay. Big, athletic, gets to the rim. You know, he's being recruited by UConn, but he reminds me of one of those big UConn guards that UConn has had under Dan Hurley, a more athletic Tristan Newton, who was the Final Four MVP in 2025, but he's kind of one of those big, super athletic guards, you know, NBA player, just oozing absolutely out of him, okay? He was the MVP of the MBPA Top 100 camp this summer. That's one of the best camps in America. All of the top high school players are there, and he is trending to be a, no doubt about it, McDonald's All-American. One of my favorite players in the class. I love watching him play. And transparently, I will say he gets set to visit NC State this weekend. He feels like he has one of the more open recruitments of some of the elite players left. Now, most of the elite players in college basketball are starting to come off the board. But with Dylan Mingo, you know, it still feels very much up in the air. He's already visited UConn. He's already visited Miami, Washington, and is still scheduled to visit UNC and Oklahoma, among others. But I'll say this, you know, knowing what I think I know in the recruiting circles, I don't think any of those schools feel like they have a great, I don't think any school feels like they are the definitive favorite, right? There are other recruitments like Tyron Stokes. Like, he hasn't committed to Kentucky yet, but I think 3 of his 5 finalists feel like they have no shot to get him. I don't feel like we're there with Dylan Mingo. I feel like his recruitment is wide open, and I feel like Will Wade is going to put on the full court press this weekend when he's in Raleigh. Here's the thing, though. If he doesn't get Dylan Mingo, one of the big things he can sell is you better commit now, because Deron Rippey Jr. is coming right down the road. Deron Rippey Jr. is a 6'2" guard, also from the New York City area. Saw him play at the Adidas event this summer. I love his game. He almost reminds me of a Calipari guard. Super quick, gets to the rim, finishes through contact, beats people off the dribble. Also a very good three-point shooter. What's interesting about him, his recruitment may be even more wide open than Dylan Mingo's is, okay? Because how about this? He has already taken visits to, I hope I get all of them, Miami, North Carolina, Texas, Syracuse, Kentucky, Duke, Tennessee. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 visits with NC State coming up. And so we will see what happens. NC State fans, I want to be clear. I cannot and am not promising either one or both. But what I will say is I think you have to feel good about getting one. First of all, Will Wade doesn't miss very often, right? And the thing about Will Wade, and I haven't talked to him, I haven't talked to anybody on his staff about these players. So I want that to be clear because we've had Will Wade on the show. But Will Wade is very tactical in how he recruits. I don't think he waits this long in the process to get a kid to campus to visit if he doesn't think he's getting him. Think about how Will Wade handled the Darion Williams recruitment in the summer. Darion Williams, we know he's probably withdrawing from the draft. All the buzz is on Kansas. He's got this Kansas visit set up. Will Wade sneaks in the side door, gets Darion Williams to campus, gets him, whatever, and then he ends up committing to NC State when everybody thought he was going to Kansas. And so I don't think Will Wade is going to publicly have both of these guys on campus if he has no shot at getting them. And I think he's got a great shot because, two, I think both players are pretty wide open. I think it's also worth noting, and we've talked a lot about this, the NC State basketball GM, Andrew Slater, a guy that I have a great deal of respect for. He's a New York City area player, knows that area well. So I think he's got really great connections in that area. And again, haven't talked to either one of them, but use some common sense. You think Andrew Slater is going to let those kids come to campus and put them in front of his boss if he knows they have no chance of getting either one? I don't think so. Beyond that, what I'd also say is this. I saw this from Corey's article. This was Corey Smith from Pack Pride. He doesn't put out the realm of possibility that NC State could get both. Matt, pop up that quote board. So this is from Pack Pride, 24/7 Sports, NC State. Suffice to say, both guards are high priorities for the Pack and could make for a dynamic duo in the backcourt if they come together. Rippy Jr. is more of a true point guard, while Mingo plays both on and off the court as a combo guard, but they would complement each other. Plus commitment, Cole Clower and Trevon Carter-Givens perfectly. Trevon Carter-Givens, who I did not mention, is a big man. Listen, what I'll say is this. Again, do I think they're getting both? Probably not. But they both play off each other well. And I think what is also very interesting is that, NC State's going to have a lot of scholarships to give next year with about 6-7 players going into their last year. So it's something worth keeping an eye on, and it is worth noting. If they get those two guys, by the way, there's a player named Josiah James who has basically, he's about a top 35 player down to NC State and Michigan State as well. If you get both those players in year one, we are talking about a historic first year for Will Wade at NC State. As I said, really haven't signed a player. Listen, let me put it this way. Dennis Smith Jr. was the best player in the history of the recruiting rankings to ever sign with NC State. There is a possibility you get somebody better than him. You probably are looking at, if you get both 3 top 30 recruits, and you are looking at the number 1 recruiting class from Will Wade in college hoops. All right, I'll tell you what, I'm on a short, tight schedule here. I got to get out of here. Make sure you're subscribed. Aaron Torres Pod, we appreciate you. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're closing in on 65,000 subscribers. Appreciate your support. Enjoy Halloween weekend. Don't eat too much candy. Subscribe to the pod. Thank you to Circa. SeatGeek.com. Promo code Torres gets you $20 off. We'll be back Sunday, and we will have content Monday as well with college hoops opening. Shout out to Torrent Craig, Rachel, who